The Dear Molly letters were letters written by Molly Schlott, who was the secretary to the YMCA, predecessor of the Jewish Community Center. And this was during World War II. She just began all on her own to write letters to the Jewish servicemen.
She was familiar and knew many of the young people who came to the Y, and when many of those young men and women joined the armed forces during the Second World War or were drafted, she took it upon herself to write to everyone, and they wrote back to her.
And in her office, all around in the office, she had 8x10 photographs hanging on the wall of every single boy that she was writing to. You should know there were 700 Jewish boys from Delaware that went into the Army, Navy, and Air Corps. She wrote to as many as possible, and they wrote back. And pretty soon, they would publish the articles in the publication that the Y put out. It was called the Y Recorder. And that was mailed to everybody in the community, and it was also mailed to the servicemen. So they read each other's letters, and then when they wrote to her, you know, they would write back commenting on each other's letters and on other people that they had bumped into in the course of their service.
One of the things that I think many of your younger viewers would be able to compare it to would be publishing something on, posting something on a Facebook wall. In many cases, they were writing to Molly, but they were writing to the whole community. And certainly anyone who is studying the Second World War can get a much better picture of the history by looking at the original documents. This record that people were making in writing home to loved ones or to members of their community is one of the ways that we have the stories that we do today of what serving in the armed forces during the war was like. There are many heroic stories here. But one of the real heroes in the community, his name was Artie Blattman, and his parents owned a bakery on 2nd Street. Artie Blattman was killed in action, one of those who sacrificed his life. The article that was in the newspaper is entitled, "Artillery Observer Orders Fire on Self to Clean Out Enemy." A case of a man willing to sacrifice his own life to aid the advance of his unit is the story of Lieutenant Arthur Blattman of Lieutenant Roger Lilly's Armored Field Artillery. Acting as a forward observer, Lieutenant Blattman crossed the river, dismounted with his men carrying a portable radio, located enemy units, and had fired a mission before he was captured. Just before the enemy marched in upon him with guns at the ready, Lieutenant Blattman flicked off his radio. But while being questioned, he surreptitiously turned on his radio with his foot and told his captors, "If I hadn't been captured, I'd call for fire upon this position 20 times, 20 times, 20 times. Hearing the message, his battalion commander plotted fire of 3 battalions on the position, annihilated the enemy and Lieutenant Blattman. The people behind the stories are in the Molly letters. We have letters from Artie Blattman. We have pictures of him. And then we have the story of the heroism that they were capable of. It means a lot to me when I see a story referring to this person or that one whose name I recognize and whose face I remember. Though I wasn't, you know, they weren't people I knew personally. But I think holding that story and that information out there can help this generation and the next to understand what earlier generations had lived through, and gives us a lot of respect for the sacrifices they made, and helps us to appreciate and honor today's veterans as they deserve to be honored.